Okay, good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, November the 19th. And before I get into 3i Atlas today, I have new releases on my website. I'm just going to go over them briefly. And these are really, really powerful frequencies. So if you go on my front page here, you come to David Sereda's new Bioelectric Healing System course, How to Convert Frequencies into Bioelectricity, actually with plants, for more efficient healing and Project Angels. And I'll show you what they are. Um, Firstly, my bioelectric plant course and Project Angels, these are all included with Inner Circle members. So Inner Circle members don't pay for these. You just have to ask for them. But this course shows you how bioelectricity, which is the electricity in living systems, humans, plants, mammals, animals, etc., is very different than the electricity that we run through wire to light bulbs. It's quite different. They're both interactive, but they're not the same thing. In fact, as I read Robert Temple's new book on plasma and the new science of heaven, I really learned a lot about it. And so what I've been doing and what I teach in this course is how to take healing frequencies and induce them into plants so that the plant then, in response to the frequencies, shares the frequencies back through its auric field with the person. And so that way, essentially, you're doing the same thing. So if your body's electric field gets a frequency induced upon it, either magnetically through my coil or wand systems or with sound, and sound is quite limited in its frequency range and its penetration ability, then your body converts it in a response. But plants are very pure in the sense that with researchers, and if you read the book The Secret Life of Plants that came out way back in the 1970s, plants are essentially non-biased. They don't have all these emotions going on. They don't have all these psychological patterns. So they're really plugged into the pure universal mind. So when we induce frequencies into plants using my systems, and in this course I show people how that setup actually works. And in addition to that, there is the Plant Music Interactive, which shows you how the plants are responding to your auric field and your magnetic field, etc. So anyway, this is all taken care of in this course. And Project Stargate Angels are my new super angel frequencies. And these particular frequencies, there are two sets of these. And I did these. And I can tell people this. Look, I've been meditating for 50 years every single day. To meditate every day is the greatest commitment a human being can do. To conquer the limitations of the human mind, to open up the psyche, deepen your connection to God, of whatever religion you have. But also, as you find yourself reaching higher states of consciousness, the experiences and the imprints that are left behind, all of the resentments, all of the pain and suffering that humans go through gets washed away, literally, from the most severe physical pain and trauma that a person can experience and emotional. And believe me, I've had the worst of all of them. Physical pain with kidney stones, 7 of them, which are like being crucified, doesn't even compare to the loss of my wife and my mom and other brutalities in life. And I know a lot of people probably have worse stories than me, but I can testify from adding frequencies to my meditation practice that are tuned properly, not just any old frequency you find on YouTube, most of which are fake and made up just to get people to do them. These are tuned to the 9 levels of the angelic, and I'll be giving a whole talk on this. And for, again, Inner Circle members don't pay the $333, but I'm just announcing this, so you just go to davidsereda.co and you can start exploring that. So the real message of see, everything that happens in the universe, especially in our local universe, which is our solar system, is happening in our minds. In fact, even the people who turn a blind eye from the real data in 3i Atlas and the solar system, they're still affected by it. They don't realize it's happening. In fact, I've noticed this with frequencies because I have frequency systems in my house, and at certain frequencies, my children will report amazing insights, dreams, and happenings in their lives with these specific frequencies. And I've watched this as they've grown up. So it's kind of like doing a blind and a double blind study, is that do frequencies affect us whether we're aware of them or not? We know that the frequencies of the internet are affecting everybody's consciousness, and the frequencies of the radio towers that broadcast all the music and the news in the 1950s to the 1990s, really, until we started, were affecting mass consciousness when we had those big antennas stuck on the back of our cars. And you can see the change. And as frequency background gets more and more chaotic, people become more and more chaotic. In fact, we're a frequency response relationship constantly. So when things happen in the solar system, because the wavelength frequencies of the 9 visible planets are at the same wavelengths as the 5 major brainwave states, from deep delta, the delta planets are the big ones. Uranus and Neptune, Jupiter and Saturn are delta wave planets. And then when you get into theta, that's Venus and Earth is theta, Mars is alpha, and the Mercury is beta, and on the moons of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, and even Phobos and Mars and our moon are the gamma part of the brain. So when we get a visitor like this, it's activating, and it's activating these precise angles and locations that are pointing, as I've been demonstrating, to the upper 9 angelic positions, which are, we now know, thanks to the model that I put forward, the orbits of. And once you know the orbits of, you can determine, you can actually start determining the frequencies. The way I got the frequencies is a whole math lesson. But what I'm saying is these are real. So what 3i Atlas is doing, what I'm going to demonstrate today, which is probably the beginning of its most profound message, and also today, is the big NASA press conference, which is about somewhere around noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern, for the Mars high-rise images, which I really don't trust them because I have, over 40 years professional photography experience. I'm really doubtful we're going to see the real images that they really have. They might give us some overexposed imagery. They might give us some blurred imagery, but that is the best camera in the solar system. Undoubtedly the best camera in the solar system. So if they share truthfully with us, I'll be really in shock. But we already have the data. So let's understanding that mind, we all experience it every day. If we could only experience to the surface of the skin, we would be like prisoners in our own bodies. And that's the whole point of the process of enlightening an individual through spiritual practices, is to get beyond the surface of the skin. But I think most of us have moments in the day when you step outside and you don't really feel just your body, you feel the space around you. You feel, you look at a mountain, you feel that you are the mountain. And the facts are, in the science, as I demonstrated earlier in the inner circle this year, is the frequency of the human brain in theta around 7 hertz, your brain wave is the size of the planet, because the speed of light divided by the frequency is the wavelength. So the wavelength of your brain is Earth. We're really all that big. When you tune into these frequencies and you're not just, all over the place and you actually focus, you get to feel what's inside the size of the wavelength that your brain is operating at. And that's where we feel this great sense of expanse into spatial awareness. So with 3i Atlas coming in to tune these markers and angles is a gift in itself. Whether there's intelligent beings on it or it's an alien probe, I don't even want to entertain the comet hypothesis much anymore. But as I've demonstrated, if it is some type of, it's not like any other comet we've ever seen, but whatever it is, it's proven itself to be directed by the power of consciousness, which I've demonstrated earlier in William Tiller's work at Stanford. So that consciousness is more powerful than gamma rays. So when consciousness gets coherent, it is the greatest force in the universe. It is the greatest force of the universe. And when you understand the physics of that, God, even for an atheist, is only a tiny leap away. Because when we get to the point that all science understands what William Tiller spent his entire life on, proving that consciousness is more powerful than gamma rays, it's game over. Consciousness is doing all of this. So what we decide to think and we decide to entertain becomes our reality because we're giving it that. We can change all this at any time we want if we just change our way of thinking. So to ignore what's happening, which is what most of the media are doing until today's big press conference, because I think a lot of the media will participate in whatever our space programs are going to share with us, whether they're going to cover this thing up even more and try and just make it go away or not, we'll find out. But for those of us who are going deep into this, it's becoming really clear. And what I'm going to share today is actually iconoclastic, which means what I'm going to share today is going to challenge the three greatest religions on earth, the three big ones, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because it's going to bring them all back to Egypt. And I'm going to prove it, not just with 3i Atlas. I can prove it on my own, but 3i Atlas is trying to do the same thing. And not that Buddhism isn't one of the biggest religions of the world. It doesn't have a clear focus to what I am going to show today. So firstly, let's just look. I always like to do this in the beginning. Look at where 3i Atlas is, because it's coming back. See, it's the 19th of November, and it's left 591 some days ago. On the 11th of November, it was just on the outer edge of the 591 orbit, and now it's coming. When we get to the 22nd, 23rd, we're at Mars again. You see this orange line here is the orbit of Mars. And if I turn this sideways, you can see 3i Atlas is coming to Mars. So it's time to switch our frequency focus to Mars. Again, Mars's actual frequency is the alpha part of the brain, which is very coherent. It's focused, it's the focused mind. And so the alpha part of the brain is active when we're concentrating and we're making a good, focused effort. Whereas Earth and Venus are at their wavelengths are really chill, actually. They're upper theta, so that it's in fact Venus is on the border of theta to alpha, but it's really relaxed. So when you're barefoot in the park on the grass, you're getting relaxed because you're plugging your feet electrically into the earth frequency with the plants, which is the grass. So this is where we are. We're coming in the next few days to Mars, and Mars is a powerful, very powerful planet in position. And then after that, it's going to go out into the asteroid belt where, will be guiding everybody next where those frequencies are. As we do these frequencies, as it makes its journey, we are getting tuned into what's happening in the universal mind. In fact, what Tiller's hypothesis really tells us is this universe is this mind. What my sensei in Los Angeles, my Japanese Buddhist monk who taught me for years and years meditation, is there is no universe outside of this mind. This is the substance of mind. And when a Buddhist says mind, it's not like your crazy thoughts. Actually, your crazy thoughts, when they're going all over the place, you know where the still point is? The still point is the one who's looking at them. So the further away you get from the craziness and you get to the observer, just the pureness of the observer of self, you get closer and closer into true stillness. And I was in this supreme bliss state this morning meditating early. I'm trying to understand it, to understand why it's happening and why it doesn't happen to us when we don't practice meditation or some form of concentration, for example, like martial arts or religious devotional prayers. Is the left and the right hemisphere of the brain have to come into, instead of being way out here in chaos, they slowly come together and they get harmonized and they get coherent. So the left and the right phase of the brain, which is the duality, actually are essentially becoming more and more one. They're less and less confused, less and less argumentative with self, and you can argue with others' selves or your own self. We argue with our own selves, in case you haven't noticed. And then as it becomes more coherent, where the left and the right hemisphere are balanced, the bliss starts to appear. And believe me, there's no end to it. This bliss, as the Buddha testified, conquers all suffering. Literally can get so high in vibration that even if you had nails in your wrists and you were beaten, you would be in bliss at the same time as that body is being tortured. Absolutely. So this message is about coherency. And that's what the message is. So we're going to start getting into what's new, and this is really earth-shattering. This is really going to be, it's earth-shattering. So I put it in the form of an article on my Medium page yesterday. I call it 3i Atlas, the Great Reveal. And my Medium page is medium.com/the @ David Sereda. So when we get into this, 3i Atlas is trying to communicate. So I'll explain its great reveal and the Giza message that has been within our midst for millennia. So this new image is showing by astrophotographer Satoru Murata. It was posted on Avi Loeb's Medium page. Is what I'm looking at. The angle of the jet the main jet has been consistent for weeks now. And the fact that it's consistently pointing at 26 degrees is truly remarkable. This is a close-up of his image. And what's peculiar about this close-up is I thought some of the polygonal angle structures this is 3i Atlas, could be possibly due to the optics of the camera. But when I look at the background stars here, they don't have the same geometries in the flaring of the light. So that means they're not, that's not what's causing it. So this geometry and structure, and we can see these tiny little nodes here, are definitely worth noting because they're probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're probably they're hexagons. So we're looking at a 6. And again, I don't know for sure. Every camera has an iris that opens and closes the shutter, and with very, very bright light sources being photographed, you can sometimes get angles. But I've been seeing angles in 3i Atlas that are definitely not consistent with that type of phenomenon. So again, today's images are supposed to be the best. So I took this image and I took it into Photoshop, and I had to first tilt the protractor until these long black lines in my protractor were parallel to the jet. So that just changes the orientation of the camera to the proper orientation of the angle of the jet. Because if these lines aren't parallel, you can't measure the angle. The inception of the jet is 26 degrees right here. See, this is the inception. And over distance, the jet, of course, widens. And way out here at the end, you can still see in the thickness of the jet, it's 26 degrees on the bottom and drifting to 32 degrees in the mist, right, of the jet. The size of this jet is utterly enormous. It's enormous in size. This isn't a small thing. So this jet is pointing away from the sun, which again is one of the strange things that 3i Atlas has done. The other thing about that has come up in the physics journals on 3i Atlas is they're trying to determine the axis angle with which 3i Atlas is rotating on. So if I take my pen here and I tilt it at an angle, what is the, just like the Earth? Earth has a tilt angle, right? All the planets are tilted. And oh my God, I need to bring this up. So when you rotate on an axis over a period of 16.16 to 16.15 hours, in minutes was the age of Methuselah. But if it was unstably rotating like this over long exposures on the camera, you would have a real distorted jet. So I'm arguing the angle of the jet is probably the tilt angle. Now, we've already done this in the inner circle, but before I go further, I want to find my my tilt angle article. And because when I looked at, remember, we did this in the inner circle before, when I looked at all the angles of tilt of the planets and I added them all up, what happened? There, I can show it. This is incredible. I'd completely forgotten about this insight. See, the insight process is part of what happens when you do frequencies. This is in a form of an email. So when I added the tilt angle of Pluto 120 degrees, Neptune 28.5, Uranus 98 degrees, Uranus is tilted right on its side. Saturn 26.7, Jupiter 3, Ceres 4, Mars 25, Earth 23.5. We're tilted at 23.5. Mercury, Venus, Venus 3, Mercury 2 degrees. I got 333.7 degrees. So of course there's 360 degrees in a circle. Subtracting 333.7 was 26.3 degrees. Oh my God. Now, this is what I mean about 3i Atlas's message. It's tilted at the missing angle, which happens to be the slope angle of the Great Pyramid's ascending passage, which is the most mysterious angle in the whole solar system. In fact, the mystery of this angle is going to spellbind us beyond belief. Remember, angle is pointing to the angels, the planets of the angels. So this is, to recap this, adding up all the angles of the planets in the solar system, and I'm adding Ceres, which is a dwarf planet in the asteroid belt. I get 333.7, 360 degrees minus 333.7 is 26.3 degrees. So 26.3 degrees is the tilt angle of 3i Atlas. To say that there's nothing going on here, to say that somehow this is my imagination is patently absurd at this point. I'm the only one really doing this work with Richard Hoagland, who is really my mentor and teacher in all of this. He's taught me so much. But together, we're able to see this. Physicists have not determined the axial tilt of 3i Atlas, but estimated in my search, this is what I found. We don't have a precise axial rotation angle tilt measured for 3i Atlas, but based on current pole solutions and its orbital inclination, its obliquity lies somewhere around 20 to 30 degrees. So 26.3 degrees is right inside of that. I mean, I think it's staring them right in the face. I actually don't think NASA uses really well-seasoned photographers running these camera systems. I think they use astronomers who take a crash course in photography, and you can't do that. So first of all, this is a side cut from Peter Lemaisurier's book, The Great Pyramid Decoded. And so you can see this is the entrance to the pyramid here, which is the descending passage, which used to align perfectly with the northern pole star, which would shine at nighttime down the shaft on a clear night. And at this point in Tompkins' book right here, he believes there was a water level perfectly set where that beam would split. Part of the beam of light would go down the descending passage at 26 degrees, and the other would split up, which is the angle of the ascending passage to the south pole star, and leads to the king and queen's chamber complexes here. Here's the queen's chamber, here's the king's chamber, and then of course you have a split. So even this triangle wedge here of the queen's chamber to the king's chamber is the 26 degrees. I mean, arguably just 26 degrees. There are people who have measured it slightly different. There could be it could be just 26 degrees. We don't really know because of the age of the pyramid and how long it's been sitting there. So, but these orientations are north-south, what's called true north-south. So when you go on a website called SunCalc, and SunCalc is not accurate over thousands of miles, but it's definitely accurate up to about 500 miles distance, which shows you the angle of the sun at any date you want. So I put in December 22nd, the winter solstice to Christmas, and on the solstice, the sun, it almost stands still for 3 days. That's why Christmas is 3 days after the solstice. It's marked inside of that stillness, and the new sun is really born at that point onward. So December, I have a typo in here. The sun rises in the southern hemisphere at 26 degrees. All right, looks like 26.3 degrees to me. And so if you were at the Great Pyramid, which is at just a shaving under 30 degrees north, which in the United States would put you way down in southern New Mexico, White Sands area actually, the sun is setting low down below. And then, no, so rising. And then it sets at 26 degrees in the west. So rising in the east, setting in the west. And so this is duly noted, but there's something really huge that everybody missed here. It's incredible what they missed. So what happens in the summer solstice, which is June 21st, 22nd, the sun rises in the east at 26 degrees to the Great Pyramid and sets in the west at 26.3 degrees. But you can already see in the diagram that there's Jerusalem right there. And Peter Lemaitre inversely actually already did this when he discovered the Bethlehem angle, that the birthplace of Jesus, marked by this blue balloon here, is 26.3 degrees to the pyramid. But I also found the Maresha Synagogue, which we covered in the inner circle, I believe last year, which is a huge discovery, also lay at the same angle. And the baptism site of John the Baptist also at this angle where Jesus was baptized. So this is not like a ley line on the ground. This is pointing to a rising body in the east where the sun rises. This is your Bethlehem angle. So that's to say, this is strange because we celebrate Christmas December 25th when the sun is down here. So to answer what the Star of Bethlehem was that was above the birthplace of Jesus here at the Bethlehem angle is a great mystery, because at Christmas the sun was in the opposite position in the south. So you have to understand also that at these angles is not only the sun, but the ecliptic plane where all the planets are riding. So all your planets are rising in the east on the ecliptic plane and setting in the west. That's why in the winter, when in the northern hemisphere, when we look to the southern sky, we can see the bright positions of the planets on the ecliptic. So they're rising and setting on the same angle. So how, if Christmas is December 25th, it's going to get really mysterious, could this be happening at 26 degrees to the northeast position, when at that time the ecliptic and the planets and the sun are in the opposite position, right? So that's mystery number one. But here's what happens when I make a graphic and I blend them together. This is the beginning of an enormous reveal. So, of course, 26 degrees plus 26 degrees is 52 degrees, and that is 99.8% of the angle of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, which is 51.853972. So this is Great Pyramid slope angle. But when I measure the full span of the two opposite positions of the rising and setting sun on the Giza plateau to our markers, and we're going to get into Jerusalem here because this is the big reveal, and this is what Peter Lemaitre was heading towards, because Lemaitre deducts in his whole thesis in the Great Pyramid Decoded here. The Great Pyramid is the missing temple to the Lord God in the land of Egypt, from the book of Isaiah, chapter 19. So this is really mysterious, that the slope angle of the Great Pyramid itself is the full angle between two steps of 26 degrees of the rising sun between summer solstice and winter solstice. And then the same in the setting positions. And we know 3i Atlas will be at Great Pyramid angle to Earth this Christmas Day. From the 21st, 22nd to the 23rd, it will be at this angle. And over long distances, these angles, if I put 3 or 4 different positions on the Earth, in fact, the entire diameter of the Earth over this distance, that angle will only change by arc seconds of degree. So you won't even notice it on a protractor at all. It's basically holding that angle. Now, when I tracked what's called the hourly flight path angle relative to the ecliptic plane of 3i Atlas, and 3i Atlas is within 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane, This is its hourly flight path angle. This slope angle is 13 degrees, which is half over a period of 30 days, which is half of 26 degrees. Half of 26 is 13. So you can start to see what happened. Then 26 times 2 is 52 pyramid angle. So if you were looking at the surface of a lake here, right here, where my 51 is, in the mirror, the span, if I put this angle here above the lake, you would see its equal and opposite reflection in the lake, and you would see a double of that reflection. So it's pointing to the other side of the mirror, which is where our hyperdimensional angelic planets are. They're on the other side of the mirror. Watch what's going to happen. So now what happens? I place my marker for sunrise at the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. So this tells me where the sun is setting on Christmas Day. This is December 25th. It's setting, and I zoomed way in. Of course it is. It's setting at the Great Pyramid. The Church of the Nativity of Jesus Christ, this is huge, on Christmas Day, sets at Giza. Nobody's noticed this for the past 2,000 years. Why is the birthplace of Christ in alignment to the setting sun of the pyramids of Giza if the message isn't iconoclastically clear that these two positions, that there is no conflict of separation between them? And in fact, when I map all my positions, Dome on the Rock, Solomon's Temple, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is where Jesus's tomb is, and Bethlehem, over this distance, I'm still converging right here at 26 degrees. So this distance is approximately 300 miles. And so I'm still really accurate on a flat map at that distance because the curvature of the Earth is only 8 inches per mile. This is the angle of the setting sun. So if I'm in Jerusalem or I'm at Dome on the Rock, they're all very close to each other. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, Bethlehem, on the winter solstice to Christmas date, the sun sets right at the Giza pyramids. This brings all three religions back to the missing temple to the Lord God in the book of Isaiah. This is so clear. So when I go to here, that's the Church of the Nativity. Remember, so it makes perfect sense because this is Peter Le Mesurier's discovery that from the Great Pyramid bottom left at noon, summer solstice, a shadow was cast from the pyramid. Let me see if I have that graphic of his shadow cast. That's in a different article. To Bethlehem, and if you continue that line, you can see the Jordan River crossing, which happens to be the baptism site. So obviously at equal and opposite the year, so the winter solstice, the summer solstice is when he marked this, June 22nd. The opposite time of the year, December 22nd. The inverse would be that the sun would not be rising in that position, it would be setting in that position. So you have your rising and your setting. You see, here it is. In the winter, December 25th, the sun rises 26 degrees to the southeast over here. Now, this, a lot of study has to be done to find out what is this yellow line intersecting. That's your rising sun. But your setting sun is the Giza pyramids. This is incredible. So I did the same thing for, in fact, I should get my other graphics up. for Dome on the Rock, I did the exact same thing. In fact, what I'll do, I'll show you how this works. So I'll go, because I have a bit of time. I'll go to SunCalc. And share a screen with you here. Show you how SunCalc works. Now, again, just a caution, it says, oh, for development purposes only. And that's because over really, like if I go really far across this kind of a distance here, it's going to distort because my map is flat and it's not adjusted for the curvature of the Earth. So, but over short distances, it's very accurate, which I've checked. So now what I'm going to do, wherever I put, you see here up in the left here, I have my date. So I can go to December 25th, right? And now I'm going to go into Jerusalem right here. And you can see there's Bethlehem there, but I'm going to go, we've already done Bethlehem. I'm going to go right into the city. And I've done this a few times. Eventually you get to know your way around this city from the air, old city, Tower of David, Church of the Holy Sepulchre right here. So there's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre right here. This is Jesus's tomb. So all I have to do is click, and for the date of December 25th, I just have to zoom out and I can see really clearly. See, I just ran right through Cairo. There's Cairo there. And then I mean, I know this from the air so well. And when you zoom in, and of course, Le Mesurier did this in the summer solstice position precisely. And so I just have to click here, and then I'm back at the Giza pyramids and zoom in. So if I go back to, because I want to go to another site, I want to go, when you see the distances that I'm talking about, you see, if I go over this distance, I'm going to have distortion on my angle at that distance in the position on the ground, but not over a distance of 300 miles. I'm not going to have, I might have a matter of a couple of feet of distortion. So when you go to all of these positions, they all take you to the same. Here's the Western Wall right here. Dome on the Rock. Here's Dome on the Rock right here. So I put my cursor on Dome on the Rock. And again, over this distance, you see, I'm just gone right through Cairo. In fact, Cairo itself is at the setting angle at winter solstice. You see, I can change, like I'll change the date here because I know what the sun does. It just sits still. It doesn't even move. I mean, my angle doesn't move at all. And it's interesting that Cairo and Jerusalem, by design, are at the setting sun angle, winter solstice to Christmas in itself. But the three pyramids at Giza, in fact, I've got to nail this right down to all the way to Orthodox Christmas, because Orthodox Christmas is January 7th, 8th, which is 3 days after winter perihelion. So we have two winter markers. We have winter solstice, December 22nd. Christmas is 3 days later. Eastern Orthodox Christmas is January 7th, 8th, which is 3 days after winter perihelion. And perihelion is when Earth is at its closest position to the sun in the elliptical offset orbit. Right. So we have two winter markers. January 1st is the average between the two dates. A lot of people don't know that January 1st is kind of like the compromise between the two dates. And these two dates mark actually a hyperdimensional opening in our solar system to the upper and lower 9 positions, which is what my new frequencies I have on my front page are all about, which I talked about in the beginning of this. So it doesn't change. Now, if I go up here to, let's go to, I gotta change my date here to, no, January 7th. You see how little? You see my orange marker, my previous orange marker here? It's actually changed a tiny bit. So it's going up a bit, just a tad. Now, if I go back 2,000 years to the time of Christ, this will barely have changed. And in fact, in the historical archive, the movements of the Jewish temple, there are at least two movements of where its position was stationed over millennia, thousands of year cycles, because of what the temple is tracking in the heavens. The Jewish temple of Solomon, where the Holy of Holies was kept in the Ark of the Covenant and the 12 staffs for the 12 tribes in the menorah, has an east-west set of doors for the rising and setting sun. So if I go to uh, January, February, March 21st, these are my equinoxes. This is spring equinox. And so you can notice here on equinox, the sun rises directly east and sets in the west directly east, parallel to 29.97 degrees north latitude. See, so those are your equinoxes positions. And the function of the 26 degrees, we're only right now at stage one because stage two gets way more mysterious, way more mysterious. So remember, if we go back to where we started today, we started with the new frequencies of the upper 9 angelic positions for people to do. We are going to be working on these in the inner circle starting in January, and everybody will get those free who are members of the inner circle. And then we come to the newest image of 3i Atlas. I just want to recap until whatever NASA decides to reveal today, and from the Mars high-rise cameras, they'll probably give us the worst images that it got just to make us happy. So again, this is its consistent angle that I've documented is the 26-degree angle of the jet, which is sending us a clear message. And the axial rotation period at that angle in minutes is equal to the age of Methuselah, the oldest living person in the Bible, which also marks a position in the hyperdimensional positions of the 9 planets. But when we see the mystery of the 26 degrees, it's not as simple. It's not as simple as just lining up with the rising and setting sun at the two extremes of the winter solstice and the summer solstice. It's not as simple as that. And the ecliptic, because all the planets are riding at that angle. Because the star of Bethlehem is the real mystery. Because the real star of Bethlehem, we're going to get into this at Christmas to know what the real star of Bethlehem is and why it's, and you'll see when I get into Fatima, because Fatima is going to play a real trick on us, because we know that Fatima is 26 degrees to the west of the Great Pyramid, the setting position of planet 139. But I'm now getting really deep into everything that happened on that day. And no, the sun was not at 26 degrees that day, but Fatima itself and its position is at 26 degrees to the pyramid. So that's where the door opens to the next level of the mystery, because with 3i Atlas pointing at this angle, and all the astronomers are going to miss this. If you're not an archaeoastronomer, meaning understanding that the temples were built not just as planetary and star markers, they were built to receive light from stars on specific dates and planets on specific dates through portals and openings in in the temple complexes. And that means the doorways, and it means the shafts in the pyramid. And to receive that light isolated, when an individual is inside of that chamber, opens the door to them, to the frequency and the angle to have a spiritual experience. It's so funny to me when scientists and archaeologists, they look. I mean, I had an argument on my Medium page that the Great Pyramid is only set at that angle because it's the perfect angle to distribute its mass and weight, and it has nothing to do with what you're talking about. And then if you read the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the entire book is devoted to the ascension of the human soul in the afterlife, with the goal of the deceased reaching the planets of the gods for a better life and a higher life in their next incarnation. That's what the whole thing is about. So when a archaeologist, scientist tries to tell you that the pyramid was built just as perfectly built structure and doesn't have any spiritual function, um, it's just, again, it's just when a person doesn't want to believe, they will close their mind. When a person doesn't want to believe that the angle of the jet is not a message, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, I'm presenting clear evidence. It has been sending all the pyramid angles. The first time, the jets equaled three of the greatest angles in the pyramid, and its final holding at 26 degrees steady, I've demonstrated part one of what that angle actually means. So it's also noted too, we can say this, that in Islam, wherever a Muslim person is on the planet, they face Mecca when they do their prayers. And that sets up an orientation of angle between the person and the intentional direction of where prayers are aligned. I don't think Christians do this. They don't do this practice, but I think some Catholics might face Rome in the Vatican in prayers, but I don't think many of them are even aware of that was a ritual of practice. But so to understand angle on the ground is really pointing to the rising bodies. This is my east. So I have to look on Google Earth and see what angle I'm at here. But I can see in the south all the planets and the stars, and the sun rises in the east and goes up through the sky and sets in the west. And the grand gallery stars, which are the stars Sirius, the three stars of Orion's belt, and Pleiades at the end, all rise at this time of the year. Again, on specific dates, those stars, see, this is really important. This will be a final position for today. So if I go on my angles project, this is really important for understanding our angles. This is really important about the 26 degrees. Don't think the 26 degrees has anything to do with anything other than the position of the Great Pyramid to our targets. Because if you station yourself up here and you're at the Bosnian pyramid, or you're sitting up here in Ukraine or Russia, the angle to those positions in the heavens is not 26 degrees, right? And if I come all the way over here where I am, I'm way up here. So I'm up here, British Columbia. I'm above northern Idaho. So I'm at, like, what am I at? 55 degrees here. No, I'm not that high. I'm way down here. Sorry. I'm way down here. I'm somewhere, where the heck am I? Somewhere around 48 degrees, right? I can't see exactly where I am yet, but I could do this later. But the point is the angle changes to the positions of the heavens and the rising and setting, depending on what north or south latitude you're away at. So that sends the message of 3i Atlas absolutely clearly to the position of the Great Pyramid. Absolutely. That angle in the heavens, position-wise, won't change very much from Jerusalem and Bethlehem. It won't change very much at all. But when you move a lot north-south on the sphere of the planet, it starts to change more and more and more. So that would mean that for 3i Atlas to be communicating like this, to be a Great Pyramid angle to Earth on Christmas Day would affect the whole Earth. But the 26 degrees is pointing to Giza as it's pronounced by the Arabs, which is Jesus. And that is really interesting to me. Is something going to happen at Christmas? I don't know. It might just be saying, if you're awake, you'll see my messages, which I've been sharing with the world freely. These are my messages. And if you don't want to notice, then for you, nothing will have happened. I'm really sitting, in my chair going, I want something to happen that is undeniable for the masses, but I can't be certain that something will happen. Will there be? I mean, we know this. We know that when the star Bethlehem appeared, which I believe is planet 139, hyperdimensional planet responsible for the miracle of the sun at Fatima, we had the birth of the messianic figure, who is known as Jesus Christ. But will something greater happen? We have yet to see. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we'll see you next.